Hi everyone, welcome back to Geterbrewed. Today I'm joined by Nick Brewing from Murphy & Sons, and we're going to cover the taboo topic of enzymes. Very much a misconception in my personal opinion. We chatted about this off camera, but a lot of people think that enzymes are only used by macro brewers and big beer, and that they're chemically engineering the production of beer. But biotechnology is very important in the production of beer, and a lot of these enzymes are actually natural, aren't they? And that's the...
Yes, they are. I think I well understand the reticence and hesitancy of brewers to use enzymes extraneously to the naturally present malt enzymes, because it is perceived as a little bit chemical brewing, chemical engineering. Biotechnology gone mad, and Frankenstein also says, we want to do things natural way, which is fine, and I really I totally understand it, and I totally get it. I was there myself in my earlier brewing careers, and I think that view is comes from the traditional brewing base in the UK, where you've got high quality, well modified malt in a single infusion mash making classic British ales. You don't need extraneous enzymes. There is plenty there present in the barley malt to do the job, period. Finish the job, make a nice beer without using enzymes. However, we now have a much more dynamic brewing situation with smaller breweries doing quite innovative stuff with different raw materials. That, coupled with smaller brewery equipment, which is not as, so to say, sophisticated as the bigger breweries, who can have a better bite at the cherry, and the natural variation you get with the barley malt. And certainly in the last 3 to 4 years, the variability of malt has been extreme, to say the least, because we are seeing extreme weather events occurring at critical times of the growing season in the barley growing year. Excessively dry harvest, excessively wet planting times. So these produce barleys but are not so well modified. And when you've got that less well modified malt, you've got simplistic brewing kit, which is prevalent in the craft brewing side or the home brewing side, you won't get the yield or the quality from the barley malt that you would normally get. Now, that's a problem for brewers, because you do need to get quality for sure, and you need to get as much extract as you can out of the grain. So then the use of extraneous enzymes to help you do that becomes very interesting and important. And it's not so unnatural, because if you look closely at the whole brewing process, the way the barley converted into malt, the way the malt is converted into sugars, the way the yeast converts the sugars into alcohol, it's an enzyme-driven process, as all good brewers will know. So what then is the difference in supplementing that operation with a few other naturally occurring enzymes? Enzymes are nature's keys to unlock processes. If you think of an enzyme as being a key, they're very, very specific. An amylase enzyme converts a starch molecule into maltose, an alpha amylase. It breaks the alpha 1,4 link in a long chain molecule to yield 2 little units of maltose sugar. That's all it'll do. So an amylase enzyme, if you get that from yeast, if you get that from a bacteria, if you get that from a mold, why is it so different?
What's the
difference? There is no difference.
That's why you're here today, Nick, to tell us.
That is why there is no difference at all to use these enzymes. And the brewer has the choice, always have the choice, like we all do. It's a nice thing to be able to have. They have the choice. So brewers who can apply the science, understand the process, and use extraneous enzymes, they can get over the hurdles created by the natural variation in malt quality. It allows them to open up their ability to use a wider variety of cereals like rye, raw barley even, rice, maize, these other cereal adjuncts which are popular in brewing and sometimes cheaper than barley malt. So it gives them that flexibility to maintain quality, and importantly as well, become quite economic in their production. The use of enzymes it's given this ability to the brewer, this choice to the brewer to get over the problems encountered with poorer quality raw materials.
Yeah.
But it also gives the opportunity for the brewer to speed up his process.
Yeah, yeah.
Because after a while, and all good brewers will know this, the demand of the marketplace can sometimes be so that in the summertime, sales are screaming to get the beer out of the brewery because they've got people wanting to drink it.
Yeah.
But the brewer is saying, oh no, it can't go because it's not ready yet.
Yeah.
Well, that might be fine if the brewer is puritanical and says it's got to have 15 days to get to the right level. But if you can achieve that same quality in a shorter period of time and get more sales, well, which brewer wouldn't like to have that?
Yeah, yeah. So one of those particular products which I believe is performing exceptionally well for you is ALDC.
Yes.
I'm not going to try and say the...
It stands for acetolactate decarboxylase. All enzymes end in the word ASE, A-S-E, amylase, glucanase, glucosidase, and ALDC, ASE.
Yeah.
But it's essentially a naturally occurring enzyme from many microorganisms in the microflora of the world. And what it does, in short, it's catalyzing the reduction of diacetyl to harmless acetoin in a very quick way so that you don't have to have a diacetyl rest for lager production. One of the difficulties in lager production, as many brewers who have tried this will know, is the formation of this compound called diacetyl, which is an off flavour in lagers. Curiously, it's actually an attribute in ales and bitters, but that's another story. In lagers, it's an off flavour. You do not want it. It's a buttery, butterscotch, unpleasant characteristic to have, both in aroma and in flavour. It's formed by yeast during the early stages of respiration, when in the aerobic phase of yeast growth, yeast is synthesizing an amino acid called valine. Valine is an amino acid required by yeast for growth, for synthesizing new cell wall material when it's budding new yeast cells. And during the synthesis of valine, an intermediate product is created called acetolactate. And this is a small molecule. It leaks outside the cell wall, through the cell wall, into the wort. And in the wort is oxygen. And in the presence of oxygen, in the early stages of the fermentation, this is still in the aerobic stages, the acetolactate is oxidized to diacetyl, which is this pungent aroma compound we don't want. Now, it hangs around in the wort. All the oxygen gets used up. The yeast switches to its anaerobic phase and begins the fermentation.
Yeah.
When the fermentation is over, the yeast is still looking around for things to do. It sees the diacetyl in the wort and it imports it back into the cell through the cell wall, and it metabolizes it to a compound called acetoin, which is non-smelly and tasty. It's a neutral product. But the yeast does that work, and you have to wait for that to happen if you don't want diacetyl. And this can take 24, 48, sometimes even 3 days to occur at a warm temperature. So hence the lager production diacetyl rest, to allow the yeast to do that. And that's fine if you've got the time to do it.
Yeah.
In many operations, when you've produced a really good lager and sales are screaming for beer, they want the beer out, and you say, oh, I can't. The brewer says to the salespeople, I can't let the beer out, it's still got diacetyl in it.
Yeah.
Well, what would it be like if you could eliminate that diacetyl step? You would save yourself 3 days.
Fast track the
product.
Yeah.
The addition of the enzyme ALDC, which you'll remember is acetolactate decarboxylase, adding that enzyme to the wort at the start of fermentation, it will, as soon as the acetolactate rather, is leaked into the medium through the cell wall, the enzyme catalyzes that to acetoin immediately.
No
so
flavour.
there's no diacetyl, which has no flavour, so you don't have diacetyl in the final product. So you do not then need to have a warm diacetyl rest. As soon as your fermentation is finished, you can crash chill that lager to your desired cold store temperature, and away you go. So you've saved yourselves possibly up to 3 days worth of time. And that's a very, very handy thing to have. It's a process aid, it's totally natural, there's no label declaration required, there's no other format, there's no effect to flavour, colour, foam, or any other beer attribute. So it's perfectly safe to use, and away you go.
Product. And it comes in multi-pack sizes. I think we hold 1 and 5 litre. I don't know anyone locally that's using more than 5 litres. You know.
No, again, like all enzymes, the dose rate is very low. It's between 1 and 3 grams per hectolitre, because these things are all working at a ppm and a ppb level, so you don't need much.
Yeah.
I know it's expensive, but you just think of the time that saves you, and the sort of the quality that'll give you.
Yeah. Another product enzyme that's very, very popular at the moment is Brewers Clarex, and we have Brewers Clarity. And just before the camera went on, I was asking you, and you said it's just the same thing, only because you repackage it, you take ownership and change the name to
Correct.
Murphy. So tell us about the benefits of it.
Yes, Brewers Clarex, it's a protease enzyme, which again ending in ase, protease, so it's working on proteins rather than on starches like the amylases do. It's designed to prevent chill haze in lager. It was produced designed and produced many years ago for the global lager market. Of course, the world drinks about 60, 65, 70% lager. And chill haze was a big problem with lager production, as those brewers will know. And the way to remove it traditionally was time, sedimentation, a bit of chemical treatment with certain stabilizers in the cold maturation cellars. But cold, also you need to get your lager cold to do so.
Yeah.
Brewers Clarex is an enzyme which actually prevents that chill haze occurring in the first place. And just to take you back up the process a little bit, going back to the wort, or even to the mash and the malt, the proteins that cause haze come from the barley.
Yeah.
And they're like long chain peptides which are leached, come out through mashing, and they survive through boiling. And on these chains, at the end of each chain is a proline group. Now, proline is an amino acid, which is very, what we call sticky, i.e. it'll attract other proline groups.
Yeah.
So in a fairly short space of time, these will go all the way through fermentation. They're ignored by the yeast. They go through to the final beer, and they aggregate together in beer over time and come together and gradually form larger and larger clumps until that becomes a visible haze, which is protein haze, which is chill haze.
Yeah.
So this enzyme, Brewers Clarex, is what we call an endoprotease, specific proline protease. It cleaves the proline group off the peptide at the start of fermentation in the wort before the yeast gets going. Now, proline is actually an amino acid used by the yeast in yeast growth.
Yeah.
So the yeast sees the proline free now floating in the wort.
Chews it up.
It says, oh, that's very good, I need that. And it takes it in and it incorporates it into the new yeast cells. The effect being the resultant polypeptides have no proline groups on them, so they can't recombine in the final beer. They still go through to the final beer, but they don't recombine and form haze. So therefore you've got no chill haze.
Yeah.
Now, that's an enormous benefit to the brewers, the big brewers, who would be otherwise spending a long time trying to treat that chill haze by cold temperature or by other chemical stabilization means. So that means that they can stop using chemical treatment and cold, which is a huge saving for them.
Massive energy savings.
Because refrigeration is probably about 70% of 70% of the energy of a brewery needs. And so you can imagine in these current times with the focus on energy, how much that can save a brewer's energy bill. And another benefit for it is that, as a sort of side benefit of it, is it actually helps to make beer gluten-free.
Well, that's a big thing nowadays.
And of course that's now also a big thing because of the concerns that we all have with, free from foods. They've got to be clean, and people from all walks of life are able to enjoy it.
Yeah.
So you've got that benefit too. And we see a huge sales of this, of both the Brewers Clarex and the ALDC into the smaller brewers. So where now is the sudden, skeptic to use enzymes in the process?
Yeah.
Many people are using these now, and they're using it for those particular purposes. So other enzymes can be used, should be treated the same way.
We have a lot of brewers using these products. If you're watching this at home and you're a home brewer, they're some of the most accomplished craft brewers in Ireland are regularly using these products, and I personally think it's a taboo misconception. It's a great product, and that's part of why this video is important, to get that message across. Yeah,
good.
Glucanase, amylase then?
Yes, they're all used more upstream in the brew house to address the issues of poorly modified malt, or to address the issues of cereals other than barley that have very low natural enzyme content, and the
distillers. Sorry to talk over you there, but distillers use a lot of this, don't they? Because they would, you can cut that out if we need to. Am I getting that wrong? They're always glucoamylase maybe more so than...
We do see that. Of course, you've now entered into a little bit of the world of legislation, because in Scotland, to produce malt whiskey, you're not allowed to use enzymes.
Right.
So they have to use very highly enzymatic, diastatic power malt.
High DP.
IDPs, which is for whiskey production. But if you're producing gin, vodka, rum, you can use enzymes, and of course that is very satisfactorily done very happily done by many distillers, because and certainly I've seen it where whiskey distillers want to get into the spirits market, but you've got to wait 3 years to be able to call it whiskey. So what they produce their whiskies and they put it in barrels and store it, and that's going to be whiskey. But in order to get some income in those 3 years, they'll make gins and vodkas, and they can use enzymes on that mash to enhance the spirit yield.
Any other enzymes in the Murphy's catalogue that...
Well, I think the one I'd like to mention for you, which is also very popular, and it's a good all-round enzyme, is trizyme, which is, by its very nature, is 3 enzymes. It's a protease, an amylase, and a glucanase all in one. And it helps to address this issue that I spoke of earlier about the problematical malt harvests, when you've got a difficult year and the extracts are falling, or you're getting problems with runoff or conversion, or all 3 of these problems. And it's a blend of these 3 enzymes that'll help unlock more extract. Sometimes yeasts will refuse to. We often hear of brewers complaining about slow fermentations or sluggish fermentations. There are a variety of reasons for that, but it can be so that the spectrum of sugars presented, or the amount of nitrogen present in the wort from proteolysis in the mash, is not enough to get the yeast active as they would normally like it. And so they end up with a sluggish or a tailing fermentation. It doesn't drop and finish off nice. It starts to hang up short, and you're waiting those extra days for those last few points to come through.
We don't sell that type of malt here at Geterbrewed, so if you're buying per malt from one of our competitors,
you won't have that problem.
You need us to fix that problem. We have the Murphy and Sons solution to that.
But again, it's you'll see it more so. Most British malts, from all the British malts, is a very high quality. But it's this use of perhaps the wrong mashing temperature,
or lots of adjuncts being added. And things like that.
Lots of adjunct. Because they want to be a bit. All brewers want to sort of create something slightly different, which is unique to them. So they will come up with their own interpretation of a recipe, and that may involve more difficult cereals. And that's where enzymes come into play, and particularly the trizyme.
Okay. Any other enzymes that we need to touch on, or have we covered the important ones?
I think we've probably covered of course, you can get the straight amylases, you can get the straight, the AMG enzyme is quite, amyloglucosidase. Now, that also comes into its own when, for a while, I haven't seen it recently, but there was a trend for the production of brute IPAs.
I was just about to say that,
sort of dry, very dry, fully fermented worts, which go right down to a gravity of 1.0 or even 0.999. So everything is converted into sugar.
I quite like that. Almost like a champagne style beer. Especially if the right hops were used, it was a really refreshing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, you won't get that with a normal infusion mash, because you'll always have some residual sugar, some what we call unfermentable sugar, higher weight oligosaccharides, which the yeast won't be able to ferment. So you'll end up with a PG of 8 or 9. But if you use an AMG, that will just chop everything up to maltose, and then the yeast can ferment everything out. And so it's a very, what we call a dry beer, so you get maximum alcohol production.
It'll probably go around that circle and become popular again. It was extremely popular for quite a while, and then it's just fell out of trend, hasn't it, really?
Yes.
So look, brewers at home watching the video, if you need technical support, the perfect solution to the problems that you're having, if you need enzymes to help you get the most out of the adjuncts that you're using, or if you're just wanting to fast track your brewing process and turn around lager quicker, easier, faster, with the energy saving costs and things, get in touch with us. We have the majority of those products that we've talked about on stock here in multiple different size formats. So thanks so much for watching, and until next time, happy brewing.